We are live.
Yes, we are.
I always know what I notice in myself when we're having a show and I've
Mm-hmm.
really had a rough couple of hours.
Yeah.
I try to push the discomfort that I'm feeling by being silly. So I want to fully claim it. And if I'm going to be silly, now you guys know why. And today we have
I
Clara.
like that you say that because of course I've felt that in the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So today we have Clara Naum. And it's the second time we're having her on our show.
Yes, it is.
And we're gonna I mean, the last show was gratitude, right? And today she's gonna give
What are
us
you talking about? It wasn't gratitude.
what did we discuss? Oh shit.
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness, sorry.
We've done a lot of shows on gratitude. I can understand why you.
Forgiveness not. And today we're gonna, you see, I also messed up yesterday's intro. It's a wonderful chaos. Beginner's guide
A
to
beginner guide to forgiveness. We talked to her about forgiveness, but we never really talked to her how you go about getting to forgiveness. And we said we're going to do another show for that. So
and where we're gonna do that on?
where we're going to do that on? We're going to
Where?
do it where and wonderful chaos.
Hi everyone.
Nice to have you with us. Clara Naum. Now we have to say that we kind of fell in love with Clara after our first show.
Yeah. When you close, we discovered just now that actually we knew it also before, but when you close your eyes and you listen to Clara speak,
Yep.
it's like her voice is massaging your internal world. It's so
Internal organs.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
So I would say that we could probably fill up a few hours with Clara. And what was funny, we talked about forgiveness. And in the end of last show we had, we never really got to the point where how does one actually forgive and what do you train and teach people and how do they go about dealing with, you know, traumatic experiences where they haven't been able to let go of them.
Mm.
And then she said, well, let's just do another show on that. It made sense to me.
I already know end of this show we're gonna figure out the next show with her.
Exactly. I'll be jotting notes down. Um, we've done already a few shows on forgiveness. And
Yeah, we've kind of tackled it from different angles, right?
yeah. And I've often said, and I think I would have certainly have said it on the last show, is that when it came to forgiveness, there was a weird way that I noticed that people tended to look at it, which was that I had to forgive someone for something that they did. And that was kind of the paradigm I think most people live in general.
Yeah.
And I remember saying my big breakthrough in my life was when I forgave myself for not seeing the other person. And that was really a massive shift in how I would move through emotional pain in my life.
Yeah.
And the reason, of course, being that if I was forgiving the others, I was still holding on to something, which was almost like a superiority. Because if I could forgive you, that still meant that like I had resentment behind it, but I'm going to allow that resentment. And in forgiving myself, I saw a full release where I was just back in connection with myself. And now I could be back in connection with you. So that was a little bit of how I moved through forgiveness in my own life.
Yeah.
I think it must be a topic for you actively now because of a lot of things you've posted around your father and your trip to Cyprus.
Yeah.
So how is it for you at this moment?
Well, obviously, I kind of seeing how you have worked around your father.
Yeah.
It really resonates for me, and just tuning into him as a person, his past,
Hmm.
and like just that realization that if I was him having in his body living his life, I wouldn't have done anything differently.
Hmm.
And the fact that he was incapable doesn't make him a bad person.
Yeah.
And I often say there's no stupid people, just people that do stupid shit. And apparently
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
stupid shit.
Yeah.
So there was nothing to forgive as far as I was concerned.
Yeah. Beautiful. Hmm. Well, that's our two takes on this subject. And so let's bring on the master of this subject, the one, the only, the masterpiece of a human being, Clara Naum.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm having a great hair day. How are you?
Yes.
Great. I'm just starting.
So, Clara, we've been told by you that you're now world famous because you've been posted by celebrities around forgiveness. How does it feel the day after you've been posted by a celebrity?
It's just the same thing. Forgiveness is for everyone.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is just it's not for celebrities or the real people. And I think, as you know, I work as a volunteer inside maximum security prisons, and I've been doing that for the last 12 years. So forgiveness is something that is a thread among humanity,
Yeah.
and is, for me, the only possibility to evolution.
Yeah.
When you heard Andy and me share our experience with the word forgiveness, how was that for you?
It was beautiful, and not everyone is at that level of consciousness when you don't have to forgive, because you got to that point when you see the essence. I would say that you didn't see your father, Bamboo, you saw his essence. Because when you see your father, you see his demeanor, his behavior, his failures, and that brings everything inside of you that causes the lack, everything that you missed, everything that you wanted to have and you didn't have. So, in a sense, we can say forgiveness, but reality is full acceptance. It's just acceptance doesn't mean that you have to like what happened. Acceptance is the cessation of againstness. You stop struggling inside of yourself, wanting to change something that already happened, and you start loving yourself, even with the pain you experienced. So when I heard both of you, it was a beautiful moment, because for most people that when they are able to reach that place, it feels like awakening. And I think that forgiveness is the path to awakening. And it's not just one road. And it keeps on going every single day. Most people think that forgiveness is for the trauma, the crisis, the big, awful things that happen to us or that happen in the world. Actually, forgiveness is the key that unlocks that door that prevents us from feeling free, at peace.
I really love how you speak, and like you are an example of someone that's living the thing that they're bringing into the world, and how you're embodying it.
Thank you, Babu. That's my intention.
Yeah.
And I think it's just we can live by intention. And it's just a question of altitude and changing the attitude. And the intention, how do I want to live my life?
Yeah.
Do I want to carry inside of myself the perpetrator? Or do I want to have my heart clean and free? And I know that sometimes it's extremely difficult. And for that, I remind every single person that I work with that healing is a process. It's not an event.
Beautiful.
Sometimes when we get to that point, that is just something clicks inside, exactly like you said, and something shifts. And nothing is the same. Because you really see the soul, the essence of the other person. And at that point, everything changes. Hopefully, for the better, always. But it's just using always is a trap. So, but being aware that things happen, we experience disturbances, and forgiveness is a tool. That's it. But yes, my intention is to walk my talk. And I use forgiveness and the method that I developed after years and years of research and working with different people in the world. I use it with me. Otherwise, it's just I wouldn't be able to say, yes, it works.
Yeah.
And it does work.
There was something that you said
Yes.
that I noticed when I'll work with people and we'll get into subjects in forgiveness. You said some words and I laughed because I notice when I'll use those words, it'll sometimes trigger other people.
Mm-hmm.
And the words were full acceptance.
Yes.
And the funny thing is, and I know the brain, or I think I know the brain of the individual when they are triggered by it, because what the response often is if I say full acceptance, what it means is that the behavior, whatever it is the person did or still doing, is also something that I have to allow.
Exactly. And that happens all the time. And one of the things that helps is just, you mentioned gratitude. And that was funny because I was invited to several TV shows and podcasts to speak on gratitude too. And they're just cousins, right?
Yeah.
Gratitude is going to open your heart so you can start thinking about the possibility of forgiveness. But when people think of full acceptance, when people think, I have to forgive, it's about the mind. And the mind is not going to let you. Forgiveness is a matter of the heart. The heart that you think is broken is the one that is going to experience fullness when you start relating from the heart instead of the wound. And exactly like you said, Andy, when some people just hear the word forgiveness, it's just a barrier, is here, and I'm not going to forgive. Just don't tell me that because you don't even know what happened to me.
Yeah.
No, my stuff is so much worse than yours. You don't even know. And I'm not invalidating whatever has happened to the person. The thing is, would you rather live in that place of toxicity inside of you? Or do you want to make a different choice in your life? And then when you make a different choice, you can let that people in again or not.
Yeah.
It's your choice. Otherwise, that person, the perpetrator, lives inside of you all the time.
And repeating whatever happened.
Totally. And it's just kind of, in a sense, what do you do with garbage? Do you have it inside of you? Do you have it inside the house? Some people live with garbage inside the house, their choice. But it's just our body, our mind, our heart is our sacred space.
Yeah.
When we hold grudges, resentment, it's like living in toxicity. And especially these times, we've been talking so much about immune system with COVID and everything. So the virus is inside of us, the virus of resentment, grudges, and it's toxic. So one way to release the toxicity, you don't have to do that for others because they deserve it. You're doing that for you. It's an act of self-love, and it's a choice.
Yeah.
Simple as that. It's a choice.
It's an
Nobody
act
can
of-
force you. Okay, you have to forgive your father, Bamboo, because that's not good for you. You should forgive. Doesn't work that way.
You just added another year onto the amount of resistance he's added to that in his own head, right?
I
Yeah.
mean, I remember I used the story of my father as an excuse for everything that was going wrong in my life.
Mm.
So I would
Mhm.
blame him, and my life is shit. I'm a drug addict. I'm this, I'm that because of da 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 da.
Mm.
And that story just kept me on a very comfortable bed for a very long time. And of course, it occupied a big part of me, plus everything
Mhm.
else that was getting piled up. So there was no space for love and lightness.
Mm.
So I had to suffer to such a degree until I realized I don't have to carry this stuff anymore.
Mhm.
And
Exactly.
and I have to say that when I read how Andy how Andy dealt with it in his story with his own father, it really, in that moment, I had one of those aha, because I never had a reference as to how to navigate that
Mm.
relationship. Everyone I would tell, you're right. And everyone like kept me there fixed. So at some point, you need someone to say to you, actually, you know what? There's another way of dealing with this.
Exactly. And that at that point is about if you're ready to listen, because it's a process, as I said before. And in a sense, it's just an awakening and different levels of consciousness. When you mentioned bamboo, I was using that to justify everything that went wrong in my life. So it's a comfortable place, of
Mm,
course, in the uncomfort. So people say, I'm not comfortable here. I want something different. So there's a dichotomy. But in a sense, you didn't know differently. You didn't know better. So it's easier to look outside than to look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, I don't like what happened. Really, I don't want that person in my life
mm,
anymore. And that's the possibility too. You don't have to forgive and let the other person in. It doesn't mean reconciliation, even though it may open the doors. But at that moment, it's just about responsibility. Is the ability to respond to your circumstances instead of reacting. And there's a benefit when you don't do that process because it takes courage. We are responsible for how we deal with our emotions. Most people say, yeah, but you don't know. He did that. She did that. It's real. Yes, it is real. But how you deal with your emotions is going to affect your life one way or the other. And actually, it's empowering because you don't carry the burden and you free that energy to do different things with your life. So, in a sense, you can also think that forgiveness is energy that you bring to your life. You take that energy back so you can create different things. Your mind is going to be free from that continuous thought of getting even, victimization. Most people at some point in their lives have been victims. Living in a victim consciousness is a different story.
yeah.
And in order to do that, a little bit going back, when you mentioned that acceptance, some people don't like that, it's exactly like forgiveness. Because they think that they have to accept what happened, and that means making everything okay.
Mm-hmm.
So prior to acceptance, we have resignation, kind of grief, denial, upset, anger, and then, okay, resignation. Resignation is not fully accepting everything and having judgments about what has happened. What does that mean, having judgments? It's still wanting to change what already happened. And we live in the past. Forgiveness is in the present. We forgive the past, but it's in the present moment. We can go back to the past and see the younger one who experienced that and forgive everything and everyone so you can free yourself. But it's a choice and it's a lifetime thing. So for the people who are listening to us, you can be upset about that, and that's okay. That's a process. But it's a choice, and it's your choice.
It's almost an invitation to take responsibility for yourself.
Yes, yes. And it's like I'm hearing someone saying, kind of, yeah, but I didn't do anything for that to happen. And I get that. But you have the responsibility of your own life now. And what are you going to do with what happened to you? That's your responsibility. And sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it's going to be your whole life.
Yeah.
But as you both experience a shift at some point and free toxic energy and take back your life so you could do different things, is also a possibility.
There's something that I think it's one can talk about it, but it's hard if you haven't experienced it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And you were talking about the preoccupation with resentment and ill feelings and victimization. So all of that, and I don't know if one realizes that when that process is active and basically controlling you, because you really don't have free thought at that moment, you're a slave
Mm-hmm.
to those negative thoughts. That
Yes.
like that what life looks like when that isn't the case. Because when it isn't the case, and this is the interesting thing, you move more to just being present,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
you're not drawn back into the thought of, like, I wasted so many hours, I would say years of my life, thinking about ill feelings towards my dad,
Yes. And
writing stories over and over. And I was never really ever present with people when they talked to me, because if they said anything to me that triggered thoughts around my dad, I'd be drawn away from my own connection and really connecting to them and pulled back into my story.
absolutely. And when you were pulled back to your story, part of you was fighting to change the story in a sense.
Yeah.
Because that upset, that resentment is about, okay, I want to make things right. I didn't deserve this, or
Yeah.
just a whole of stories. And that's the reason when I decided to publish the book on forgiveness, that is actually the real meaning of the F word. And it's because people need to experience, and that's the fucking process. And excuse my language, it's just there's anger, resentment, frustration. And if we try to stuff that in, to say, I'm a good person, I'm not feeling this, or I don't want to, or I can't face this, everything that we're experiencing is changing the way we see life. And it's a filter of hurt, pain, suffering, resentment.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, in the real meaning of the F word, forgiveness as a path to freedom, it's just, I use a story, so it's not just a concept. It's just, how do we do this? When I facilitate workshops in different places of the world, people say, okay, but how do I do this? So they want the formula. So I develop a formula, but you have to practice it.
So
And
give it to us.
Please,
Yeah,
Give it to
okay.
us.
step one.
Yes,
Step one.
okay. Step one.
Where's the chalkboard?
Exactly. So in a sense, it's just the formula. It's just, first, you have to acknowledge the pain. And that's a fucking process. You have to go through that period of, I'm upset, I'm angry, I don't want this, I really hate you,
Nice.
or everything in a healthy way. Why do you think that I see, and when I volunteer inside of prisons, I see so many people that something could have changed in their lives and their lives of others if they would have been able to deal with their pain
Yeah.
and resentment.
Clara,
So,
you
yes,
mentioned healthy way.
yes, healthy way.
Um, or tell me a little bit what that looks like and what the contrast is. What's an
Of course,
unhealthy
when
way?
people hate someone and is just so upset and so triggered that they cannot think about any other thing, all kind of thoughts come into
Okay.
your mind. It's just, I'm going to punch this person, I'm going to do this, and they react physically against other person, or they implode against themselves, right?
Guilt,
Creating
for example.
guilt or really toxicity inside. You don't live your life. You abuse yourself with all kind of things, because in a sense, if I said that forgiveness is an act of self-love, when you inflict pain, addictions, anything in order to numb the pain, you're not loving yourself. So a healthy way is, if you need just to punch something, you don't need to punch the other person or see the face of the other person like you are just getting that energy into that person. It's just releasing that energy. And there are several exercises. I have created a list of exercises. For instance, you can write things not to send to the other person, but just to shred the emotions. And just like you go to the bathroom, you don't stop there and just say, oh, how beautiful this is. No, just get rid of the shed, of everything. And there are several steps in order to process the guilt, the blame, the pain, the suffering. And this happens also with illnesses, things that happen not with another person, things that you are really unhappy with your life, things that hurt you. It's part of our human experience. So when we bring all of that into the surface and we acknowledge the pain, we're saying, yes, this happened, or I did this. And then we need to take responsibility for our actions and for our emotions. So the second step is full spectrum forgiveness. What does it mean, full spectrum forgiveness? It's not, I forgive you because you deserve it. I forgive everyone and everything because I make the choice to live my life differently. From that empowered place, I make conscious decisions. Who is going to be in my life, not because I hate you, but because I'm making a conscious decision. This is not good for us. I acknowledge what the circumstances were. I acknowledge that I didn't like it. I cannot change that. I can change how I'm going to relate to those situations. So that's my choice. I create a space, and then I start doing the self-forgiveness exercises. Reality is all boils down to self-forgiveness. Why? Because we created a story around the situations, awful situations sometimes, and we were the ones. So in order to release those, it's just I forgive myself for believing, for being into this relationship, for judging these people, for judging myself as. And there's a long list of forgiveness exercises. The third step is really acknowledging the space that is inside of you, creating freedom. So you know that that's possible. And you can go back to that place every single time. So in a sense, it's just Acknowledging the pain, the first F. Second F, forgiving, starting with self-forgiveness. And the third F is freedom, creating that space, knowing that you can go back there. It's a choice. And it's your process. Nobody can tell you when. They can invite you, but it's your process.
And that's the formula.
That's the formula. And takes practice.
I think you need one more step.
Which one?
I don't know. I just like 4 steps. You've only got 3
steps. Yes, 3 steps. 3 steps.
No.
Then repeat.
Then repeat. First step is then repeat.
Then, because it's just, you thought, oh, I'm done.
No.
When you say I'm done, then the universe comes and says,
It gives you something
here,
else.
Andy, bamboo. What up with this?
It will give you someone else with different face but same energy.
Yeah.
Yes, of different situations. So you have to go back to step 1.
I have some questions about step
Yes.
1, but I see Bambos has a question. So
Well, here's the thing. We've had the steps now.
Yes.
And now I would like to have an example of how these steps can be implemented. Like, let's say a person that's been raped or in an abusive relationship. Like, I mean, these are quite extreme inflictions. And then we're saying, feel it, forgive the whole spectrum and create space.
Yes, and of course takes time and steps, and sometimes, and it includes, sometimes it says, does that mean that I have to go and forgive the other person? Maybe. It's up to you. Are you going to go and look for the perpetrator or the abuser? No. Everything happens inside of yourself.
Yeah.
You are the one carrying the pain. So the forgiveness is an inner process. We can mix and match depending the circumstances. I work with a lot of couples too. So sometimes it's just taking responsibility means being able to say, I'm sorry, and apologize. That's a different story.
Yeah.
But it's just, it doesn't prevent you from doing the inner process. So we can use an example, and give me an example, anything. And we can start with a small thing if you want.
Well, let's say it's 2 people.
Yes.
And one person is being abusive, like physically or even verbally. And then they can actually express to each other. So there is communication.
Okay, so which one is the one who thinks that has to forgive? Who is the one using forgiveness? Maybe they are not even aware that forgiveness is a possibility. We have to go into the spectrum, right? So if someone comes, that is just a couple or 2 people. One is being abusive and the other one is receiving the abuse. Is that what you said, Bamboo?
Yeah.
First, I would ask the person receiving the abuse, what keeps you in this relationship? Is there something that you're experiencing here that you don't want to leave? So that's one thing. The other person, is there any other way to communicate? So those are different things. That's a different situation. So let's work with one of them and then with the other one. So for instance, the person who's being verbally abused comes and says, Clara, I just cannot take this anymore. I'm so upset. He, she, friend, partner, whomever, keeps saying these abusive things to me, and it's just I cannot forgive him or her. So first, we have to work on what is keeping you prisoner here, right? So that person, the first step, bring all your upset, anger, resentment to the table. So I'm upset because, I'm angry because, I'm resentful because. Until we get to the point where, okay, what is the real thing that is bothering you? And maybe that person is going to say, I'm really upset because I want him or her to be different. I want him to be different. I want him to stop abusing me. And we get to a point that he or she is really upset because they're not making a different decision and they are letting the abuse permeate their experience. So they tell themselves, I'm going to stay a little longer, because and I'm forgiving. I forgave him. I forgave her already, and she keeps doing the same thing again and again. I forgive you if you do this or that. That's a different kind of forgiveness. You can do that, but in a sense, when you bring the upset, and I'm upset because I'm staying in this relationship. So we get to the bottom, the deepest place that you can get, that each person can get to different places at different moments. So at that moment, it's just, what is the judgment? First step, we get there. We let the garbage out. So what is the judgment when we go to full spectrum forgiveness? The judgment is the story that I make around the situation. Again, situation, abusive relationship, she is abusing me emotionally or verbally. That's the fact. The story that I make about that, he should be different, she should be different, I shouldn't stay here, I deserve better. So those are the judgments that are keeping me in that relationship and are keeping me prisoner. So when I'm able to reveal to myself the judgments, and I can face those judgments, instead of seeing everything that is happening around me and with that person, I see what am I feeling? What am I judging? And I'm judging that I don't deserve a different kind of relationship. I'm judging myself as less. I'm judging myself as not enough. Different type of things that come to the surface after deep processing. So when we uncover those judgments, then we can forgive the judgments. Who made the story? I made the story. That was the fact. The story, my responsibility. If I want to free myself from that, it's just I forgive myself for judging myself as not enough. I forgive myself for judging myself as having to stay in this relationship. I forgive myself for judging myself as, and you can complete, there's a long list. I forgive myself for believing into the misunderstanding that this should be different. So that takes time. And some people is just, wow, I feel something different. But there are deeper and deeper levels. So I forgive that person for forgetting that he is living his own human experience. When I get to that, that's a full spectrum forgiveness, because if I need to say, I forgive you, you can say that. But the inner work is inside. And it starts with a choice. A choice of, it's not easy, I don't know if I want to, but I'm willing. It's willingness. And then I start releasing those. And when I experience that space of freedom, I say, okay, it's just this energy that was inside of me is just energy motion. I was able to release that and create that space. What am I do? What am I going to do with that energy, with that space? That's my choice. Personal responsibility. So I can tell the other person, this is not working for me. I don't appreciate how you're treating me. I really am taking responsibility for my life, for my feelings, and I say, sorry, you don't have the key to my house, to my heart, and to my life. So wish you the best. And if you can't wish the best the other person yet, that's okay. That's a process. But at least don't wish them bad. I wish something bad happens to you. So don't create that energy again. So those will be, in a nutshell, the steps. For the other person, it's the same process, but that person may have a different energy. I'm saying that because, a long list of because, this is the way that she deserves to be treated, or maybe something is going to unfold. That's the only way I know. So we go through the same process, acknowledging, facing what happened, healthy exercises in order to release that, and full spectrum forgiveness is forgiving others, really revealing all the judgments, and forgiving ourselves for the judgments that we have created. We create freedom, space, repeat.
I used to get angry very easily,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in a relationship where I would say my partner back then would behave in certain ways, and it would just drive me crazy. And I
Mm-hmm.
would want her to be different, as opposed to coming to the step of, oh wow, we both want different things, and it actually doesn't make sense to be together. We have different values. But I had to go through this whole process of being angry, reactive, and we got into a lot of endless discussions of
Mm-hmm.
trying to convince the other person of a reality of, and there was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of right and wrong, and in the end it had to do with, fuck, I love you and it doesn't make sense to be together anymore.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. But to get to that point, something needs to change,
Yeah.
because you were fighting for things to be different. In a sense, maybe, Bamboo, it was um, an old learned pattern. I want
Yeah,
things to be different.
definitely.
So when that happened, something was triggered inside of you, and you needed to change something. If she changes, if this is different,
Yeah.
I'm going to be fine. If I only get that, I'm going to be fine. And I'm not saying that through really connecting to the other person and deep intimacy, we can bring things to the table that are hurtful, and we can really just assess, can I change this? Is that something that I want to change?
Yeah.
Am I willing to compromise? But I'm not compromising my values. That's a total different story. And we can talk about couples on a different one. But the thing is, when we try to change the other person so we are happy or we are peaceful, or we can have that kind of relationship, and the only thing that we're waiting for is the other person to change, that creates conflict, not just in the relationship. It's just constant conflict inside of ourselves. So the struggle from the inside is being represented on the outside. And it
The,
comes to a point, I cannot do this anymore.
the discovery I made is the moment I needed her to be different, I no longer loved her for who she was, but the idea of what I had in my mind.
Absolutely. And that's
And that
perfect.
and
So
that
you
was
had
such
to.
a that was such a big one for me. It was
Yes. So what about if, when you experience that, you don't need to forgive anyone, or if you don't want to, but at that point, and the permanent exercise that I suggest or I invite people to do is just when you're at that point, I say, whoa, I forgive myself for judging myself as wanting her to be different. I forgive myself for believing that she had to be according to the image that I had.
Yeah.
So, in a sense, it's a forgiving process about the judgments that we create around the stories. And the stories are so true sometimes that it has a hold. So, fact, something happens, then we interpret what happens in different ways according to our own life experience, and we create something about that. We argue about that with ourselves and with others, and we try to change what happened so everything is going to be okay. So, first step also in the whole process is facts, events, and the story. That's part of the full spectrum forgiveness too, because in a sense, it's just when we confuse the facts with the story, we're upset because of the story more than the fact.
The story is just for our viewers and also for me to see if I understand right. The story is the thing that we create in our minds based on I see something and I'm projecting an idea onto it.
Yes, exactly. And the thing is, just imagine something happened when you were a child and you were we don't even need to go to extremely difficult situations. In the book, I share with one of the stories is someone who kept inside his abuse until he was 60 something. So in a sense, the trauma was inside that person. The abuse was not happening again, right? The abuse happened 50 or 60 years ago. The story is everything that person thought without even knowing about of himself because of what has happened to him. So something happened to you and you imagine things because of the pain, and then you live life through those filters. Trauma, abuse. Let's say someone fire you, or someone is unfair. You have a project and they say, okay, you're not longer needed. And you know you're doing a great job. And you depend on that money. And it's just, and you were waiting for that to be the biggest project of your life or something like that. And they tell you, sorry, goodbye, no explanation. So unfair. So the fact is that you don't have what you wanted. You lost your project, your job, your salary. The story is, I'm unworth it. I must have done something wrong. There's something wrong about me. Everything goes wrong in my life. So I'm going to live my life with that resentment inside of myself. And those are going to be my filters. So does that mean that what other people did to you was fair or unfair? No, it's not about that. It's how do you want to live your life? What kind of a space do you want to create inside? And how do you want to use your energy? Is that clear, Bamboo?
Oh, very clear.
Oh, it's a process, by the way, as I said. It's just, it takes time. And sometimes people even get so upset just by the word forgiveness or the word full acceptance. And it's just, you don't have to like what happened. That's not part of the deal. You don't have to like it.
With this specific ex-partner, we met, and because I was a different person, I held space for her to share everything that she felt she couldn't share.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was no longer reactive or having an idea of how it should be, in the past, if she would share, I'd have a lot of defense, like I would want to have
Yeah.
a point. And the fact that that wasn't there for me, it was very healing for both of us because, in a way, She shared. I didn't react. I gave her nothing but love, and she had nothing to. Oh, he's not giving me anything to fight. So in a way,
Exactly.
she also disarmed, and there was nothing but love and appreciation
Mm-hmm.
for the journey
Mm-hmm.
that we shared.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I also work with a lot of couples who decide to, okay, we're not for each other, at least this version of myself, right? Because when they grow and they change and they release the toxicity, they lower the defense, they can meet at a different place.
Mm.
And so they're able to come together and really connect from a different place. Maybe they don't have the relationship, they don't continue the relationship, but they end the circles and the cycles inside of themselves, so they don't need to repeat that with the next one.
In a way, they change the lens with how they see the other person.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think I mentioned, and there's a heart, and I just see, this is the Spanish version of the book. Forgiveness, right? So, do you see the hearts and the flowers inside?
Of course.
And sometimes we feel that the heart is broken. Reality is a perception that we have that the heart has been broken.
Mm.
Forgiveness opens the space so we can plant seeds inside, and new things are gonna bloom, flowers, opportunities, peace, so we can live more at peace and more happy.
Clara, I love you.
I love you too, Bamboo.
um, I do have a question.
Yes.
Your audiobook, are you reading it?
Oh, no, I don't have an audiobook, but
Oh,
maybe
no.
that's a good idea.
I
No.
think it's a very good idea. How are you doing?
As Clara speaks, uh, we do similar work. So when she speaks, I'm more meditating, and I must say it also, as I would maybe give it a little different wording, but it's just listening. I don't know. I have 20 things where you state a word, and then I completely have strong associations with how I address those words in my own practices and the challenges and the beliefs and the ideas people have. So like I jot notes down at the 3 phases you wrote down, because
Mm-hmm.
I know what the challenges are for me in each of the 3 phases.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought it was funny because in the first phase, I'll often say that I don't even work with a person if they don't acknowledge that the thing they want to change is important enough to change. So
Mm-hmm.
if they haven't experienced the depth of the pain or the anger or the frustration, or if it's just a nice thing they might want to do differently, then I'm like, I'm not the one for you. Because
I,
I'll say, clearly you haven't experienced enough pain to make this something you really want to do something about.
I totally understand, and I agree with you. And from my point of view, I do work with that person because sometimes the pain is so much that they don't want to acknowledge that. So we work to really see if that person is willing to acknowledge that.
Mm.
So willingness is the key.
Yeah, I wouldn't
Otherwise,
say.
I'm judging his or her process.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I don't work with them if they're willing to go into it.
Oh,
I would
okay.
say I would
Yes.
say the first 2 months I spend teasing the hell out of them and triggering them and using every single tool so that they
I can imagine. I can see that.
they can feel it pop up. And then when it pops up, we then dig into what the actual mechanism is that they're not aware of in
Beautiful.
themselves.
Yes.
So it's a very conscious process. But what I've noticed separately from that is that a lot of people, they have convenient changes that aren't really things important to them, but they're like, oh, they're nice to to maybe improve that. And I'm always like, well, there's a lot of things that are nice to improve in your life, but to dedicate to something takes a lot of energy and time. So you really want to see how important is that for the person. So
absolutely. And actually, it's not something that I say to someone before we start, that this is not for the faint of heart. So could be easy, but could be really painful. But the intention is to go and see the pain, hopefully for the last time.
Yeah.
So in a sense, is you can cover it, you can dance with it, but until you really make eye contact with the pain inside of you, you won't be able to really experience the depth of healing and what really healing means.
Yeah.
And the defensiveness is going to come to protect you, quote unquote, and not let you be free. So if you don't want to talk about forgiveness, that's okay. Are you willing to talk about the pain?
Yeah.
Are you willing to talk about freedom? And so are you willing to take responsibility? Because responsibility, personal responsibility, is the key.
Yeah. So you got to laugh because I'm in the editing process of the third book now.
Good, congratulations.
And thank you. And I got like 3/4 the way through it. It's around connection, and specifically connection internal, but in interacting with others. And 3/4 of the way through, I said, "What the fuck am I doing?" Like, actually, the most important point I haven't made, which was personal responsibility. So there's a chapter which I laughed at, right? I wrote about it in the midway or through the book, which just pointed out that I should have started with this, but now I realize it in this point was that everything I've said is nonsense unless you realize that you dedicate to something which isn't going to be easy or convenient. And it was a funny moment because there's another thing what you said, and I just wanted to when you talk in the second step around you taking the full forgiveness. For me, there's another aspect because I'll often use the word identity, and when we let go of certain parts of our identity, things we've identified with, which are
absolutely,
which are often stories. And what I found, which is like a profound moment, and you said, after you have gone through that, the world just looks different. As it's been my experience as well, of course. But the experience that I would more equate it to in my own wording is it's really like mourning the death, because you're not only in one way forgiving yourself for holding on to these stories, but in some ways that's a person that was also part of you that no longer is you.
Totally, totally. And I totally agree with you. It's just something inside of yourself needs to die.
Yeah.
In order for something new to be born. Yeah. And that death is just, there's a grief process, because there's one of the things is that is the full spectrum forgiveness includes several things, and it's the misidentification with that role.
Yeah.
With that persona per se. And we are not those personas, we're not those behaviors, it's just the human essence that is covered with layers and layers of confusion, misidentification, understandings, stories. So we need also to release that. And when that happens, it's just grief of that person. And one of the things and the process that I do in the full forgiveness spectrum is to accept that person, that part of you, that aspect of you that lived inside of you for so long and had a purpose.
No.
And it's not serving your purpose anymore. It's not serving what you want to be. Like Bamboo said, at some point, you were blaming your father. So the death of that bamboo who experienced that in that dying process, death process, is just, instead of just, okay, died, and I'm getting rid of that, I'm going to love him so much. And I'm going to protect him. And I'm going to say, thank you. You serve a purpose at that point. There's no more room for that if we want to experience expansion and freedom. But thank you. Just it's a loving process of grieving that part that needs to die. Thank you for saying that, Andy. Beautiful. Mm-hmm.
And then the third step was the freedom. And what I found in my own journey is that, like, once you start cleaning out your closet of all the skeletons,
yes,
then there's less noise in your head.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just more present with the moment.
Yes.
And then little things that might take you away from the moment then become far more clear, because there's not like all this noise, and this just gets lost in that noise. It's like now your measurement is pretty flat. So
Yes.
even little things are like, oh, I really see, whoa, that just changed. And so that measurement shifts. And when I see the freedom for me, I've often kind of looked at life as this constant meditation, and that I'm not really looking at the world from the space of the freedom. I'm feeling how I'm registering these things and allowing myself to meditate on what are they teaching me about myself or about the environment I'm in or about the person I'm with. And since the lens isn't through judgment, because it's not what can I say, which is the paradigm most people are used to. What is it I can say about them so I feel more confident in myself, less insecure, more in control? It's more of just a wonder, just a constant state of wonder. That is what I find to be the freedom in step 3 that you're discussing. Because I know when I'm not in that state, I'm of no service to anyone, because then they're only getting...
And not service to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nor to
And
myself.
Exactly. And you cannot bring anything good to the world on anything that is just making changes. Exactly like you said. And there's the freedom for me is the path to awakening. And there are different steps. And each person is in different levels. So the altitude changes. And what you just said, the scale, oh, okay, not from the judgment, but it's just my internal GPS is telling me, you're going into a different direction. What can I take from here? Love when the metaphor of the meditation. So it's just altitude to change the attitude, gives a space for freedom. And one way or the other is the path to awakening.
Yeah.
And happiness.
That's what I would certainly say. We have some comments. We've gone over our hour. And we have Magda, who's in Vienna, Austria, says she's listening with all of her senses. Thank you, Magda.
Beautiful, Magda. And one of the things is just beautiful what you just said, because when we engage our senses and when we connect with nature, we open a space inside of us and the whole process feels different. Why? Because we are really connected, and we need connection in order to do the healing process. Instead of work. We don't need to work so much.
Yeah, I agree with that. Olga Piotti, I'm not sure if you're aware of her, but she says, Clara, I love your book, The F Word, doing well now, but sometimes the ugly past is back in my mind. Advice for that?
Repeat.
Yeah. Step 4. Yeah, step 4, repeat.
Reality is that, in a sense, when something triggers us, Olga, it's just there's still more layers. It's like peeling an onion. Don't judge yourself because of that. But it's just the past may come back, but it's going to stay maybe not so long inside of your mind. And you're going to be able to see, okay, I'm not that any longer.
Yeah.
Olga, I'm not judging that.
I wrote a book about this subject, Olga. and Bambos is going to love this moment because I don't usually do this.
I normally do this.
The wounded healer.
Oh,
And there's a nice practice in it, Olga. You don't necessarily need to do it, but it's say the thing that you're most shameful or it's hardest to acknowledge and follow it with, and it's fucking great. So I cannot get this thought out of my head. It's burdening me on a daily basis. I'm suffering from it, and it's fucking great.
so that's great. So you just go through the fucking process and end with this is fucking great.
Exactly.
It's a wonderful chaos.
I see a collab here.
Yes, there's the collaboration.
Bulelang.
Bodelang in South Africa says forgiveness is more complex than I thought. Yes, it is, Bodelang. Some of what you mentioned I knew are important things in life, but never thought of them as part of forgiveness. Interesting.
Yes, very interesting, Bololang. And actually, everything is about forgiveness. I was with a group in London yesterday. I was here from Southern California, but working with a group in London. And we were talking about Shakespeare. And most of the plays of Shakespeare end with forgiveness, but one. The only one who didn't end with forgiveness follow with more plays. So everything is about forgiveness, Bololang.
Wow. Which one was the one that didn't follow with forgiveness? Was like Macbeth or something?
Mm-hmm.
So we've reached the end of our hour. I don't know what you have, and if you've got any further, if you want to pass strange phone numbers with Clara so she can whisper messages into your ear and put you to bed at night.
We're connected on Instagram.
Thank you. It was really wonderful to be with you again.
It's very wonderful. I really love the opportunity and connecting with you from the heart and talking about things that is about our human essence and our human experience here in life. It's just, I love wonderful chaos.
Oh, well, we love having you here. And I am now in the process of learning Spanish because I will be living part-time in Spain. So,
hola.
Hola.
Mi nombre
Hola,
es
¿cómo
Andy.
estás?
Muy bien. ¿Y tú?
La cuenta, por favor.
¿Cómo vas a hacer el proceso del perdón en español entonces?
That's a bit further than my capacity at the moment. So hopefully we could do this interview in Spanish at some point as well. Yes.
That would be great. Va a ser muy lindo, Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you. Bye.
I realized when I came to you downstairs and I said, "Hey, Andy, this specific job is not. I'm not going to take it."
Yeah.
Because I've been feeling quite grounded and peaceful, and all of a sudden, this specific job, it really upheavaled me for a couple of hours, and then I realized I'm trying to make something work. And I'm seeing the consequence of trying to fit it in. It's going to be my well-being.
Yeah.
And because I made effort to get it, it felt like I need to do it now.
Yeah.
And that was the story, right?
That was the story.
And I was like, no, you've got it, and now you know that you don't need it.
Yeah. I mean, for those that didn't watch, Bambos was looking maybe to do another job, and he got an interview, and it was going to go well. And then in the process, it was, well, this just isn't making sense right now. And then we talked about it right before we came on air. So that's the background. Wow. Well, another fun show with Clara. It was really sweet.
Let it go, Andy.
Let it go, Bambos. We've got one more show tomorrow. I'm not exactly sure who we have on. Who do we have on?
I had her also.
Who do we have on tomorrow, Bambos?
Them.
Oh, yes. We got Jack Ory on tomorrow. And this show is not a comfortable show for me.
Me neither.
It's not a comfortable show. And I put it because I wasn't comfortable about it, because basically Jack, transgender, he is coming on the show to share with us the importance of using gender pronouns. And I've had my own resistance to it, not necessarily feeling like it was against anything. I just couldn't get my head around why it was so important. And for that reason, I thought, you know what? Like, instead of not having these shows on, I'd rather bring them on and actually
Explore and
talk about it, which is part of the joy of these shows, is not just thinking, oh, this isn't important enough. In fact, because I don't know why it's important, it's even more important to kind of dig into the subject. So we've got Jack Ory on tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to that now that I've owned my judgment towards the fact. We'll see you to tomorrow and next week, and the day after that, the week after that, where?
On a Wonderful Chaos.
Wonderful Chaos.